Welcome everyone. We're excited to share some country wisdom with you.
King Solomon had a thing or two to say about the path to wisdom. In Proverbs 4, he wrote, "Let your eyes look directly forward and your gaze be straight before you. Keep straight the path of your feet, and all your ways will be sure."
Join us now for Country Wisdom. Sure, a beautiful day out here, isn't it?
Oh man, this is great. I wish we brought a picnic here. I could just stay out here. We've got lovely cloud cover. Beautiful.
Makes me kind of think of the Sea of Galilee. You know, I mean,
A little bit smaller.
Yeah, a little bit smaller. we filmed on the Sea of Galilee.
Oh, I'm jealous.
I even had the privilege of filming one of the boats, or kind of like the boats that the disciples used. And
how did they compare size?
Well, this is tiny, of course. You think about
Right.
12 disciples and Jesus fitting in one, and you know they had room to knock around a little bit. But it really brings to mind something about, you know, Jesus. They'd worked hard all day. They'd been doing a lot, and they're tired. They're really tired. Jesus, he's God, but he's man also, and he wants to relax. So he comes down to the shore. He said, "Let's get in the boat and go to the other side." Now it came to pass on a certain day that he went into a ship with his disciples, and he said unto them, "Let's go over to the other side." And I think about
Do we have any idea how far that was?
Well, I mean, you can see the other side, but
Having never been there, I don't know if you can.
you can see the other side, but it's quite a ways over. It's a big. I mean, it's big enough that, matter of fact, they went out there, and pretty soon the wind came up, and the wind, I mean, it just whips and comes off of those mountains and those hills and begins to churn everything up. And it was so big, matter of fact, that we're told the boat was beginning to fill with water.
So waves were coming up over.
Waves were coming in. And you've got seasoned fishermen they're bailing. I mean, all these guys now, all 12 are bailing, and they're getting scared. Seasoned fishermen have been out here all their lives.
They were probably pretty tough. That had to have been one big storm.
Yeah, one major storm. It's filling up so much, it actually says that they're in peril of the boat sinking. So.
And they're way too far out to swim to shore.
Oh yeah.
If they even knew how to swim.
And I'm sure they did. And I mean,
well, a lot of English sailors throughout history were out on ships and had no idea how to swim.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But these fishermen, you know, they're out in the water a lot with their nets and everything else. But they're out there. The boat looks like it's going to sink. I mean, these guys are full water. Waves are coming over the top of them, and they're panicked.
I was just thinking I would be in full-blown panic mode.
Yeah.
You know how they say we have a fight or flight? They've added another F because it describes me. You don't really, seriously, Jim, you do not ever want me around in an emergency because I'll be no good to anyone. I don't panic, not externally anyway. I'm not one who's going to be screaming or getting in the way. I'm very calm, but I stand there and pretty much it's like, somebody needs to do something. It's not going to be me, but it's like somebody needs to do something here. I freeze. That's the third F. Fight, flight, or freeze. I'm the freezer.
You fit in the freeze category.
You got it.
Yeah, you know, you think about this. Jesus stood on the shore and said, "Let's get in the boat." They get in the boat, and what happens?
Huge storm.
Major storm. And like these guys are going.
You would think if Jesus were with you, everything would be smooth.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And that's what, unfortunately, you know, I think a lot of people think. Well, you become a Christian, you know, everything's roses. No, not necessarily, you know.
And as soon as things aren't roses, they think God has abandoned them or God isn't real after all. How could he do this to them?
Yeah.
I'm guilty. There are times, and I've had a pretty good life. I've not had the kinds of storms, you know. Well, there are storms that are physical, like out on the Sea of Galilee, but we've all had storms in our own lives.
Oh, yeah.
And when I look back on mine, I've had a fairly blessed life. But still, there are times where my first thought is, why is God letting this happen? Where is he?
Yeah, exactly. God, I'm your child, and why is all this garbage happening?
Why
in
are
my
you doing
life?
this to me?
Yeah, yeah. So when that happens to you, and you probably have a story or two, I'm guessing, but
Well, one that comes to mind, when we were in the process of adopting, it's very different. When I had the boys, you had a due date. You knew when this was all going to be over. With the adoption process, you don't. It's like being pregnant, but with no due date. And we had applied originally to China, wanted an infant, and at least twice, and I think it was actually 3 times, we got phone calls saying, hey, it looks like we've got a baby for you. Well, as soon as they say that, I'm out buying baby clothes.
You're
It's like,
ready.
it's happening. And then something would go wrong. I remember in one case, Steve and I had been open to medical problems, and other couples aren't. You've got some who don't want to deal with any medical issues, but we thought, he's a physician, we know all kinds of other doctors, we would be in a very good position to handle anything medical. And in this case, her eyes were crossed, which is like hardly even a problem. That's so easy to fix. And we were number 1 on the list of prospective parents who were willing to take any medical issues. So they called us. It was like, oh, this is going to be wonderful. I've forgotten how many outfits, little pink outfits I had waiting. Then they called back. It was just a day or 2 later. And they said another couple who had not been open to any medical issues heard about her somehow and said, oh, well, crossed eyes, you know, that's no big deal. They were higher up they were above us on the list. We happened to be the first ones open to medical. They weren't, but they changed their mind and said, oh, we'll take that. So they had to call us back and say, no, she's not yours after all.
and that was a pretty big blow for you.
Oh my goodness. And I was just literally devastated. It's like, God, why do you keep letting this happen? You know, you get our hopes up and then, oh, sorry, just kidding. And the emotions that you go through was a storm inside me that I'm sure equaled that storm on Galilee. And who am I blaming? God. It's like, how could you let this happen? Why do you keep letting our hopes get ruined? And I could not understand. But just 2 weeks later, they called us about Aaliyah. Completely different country. She wasn't a baby. They were talking so fast, trying to get me to not hang up and say, sorry, no, you say she's 4. We said infant. If you check the paperwork, infant. You know. And the whole time I'm saying, sure, yes, you know, well, she's, you know, from Ethiopia, not China, no problem. Well, she's 4 years old, we think, no problem, you know. I mean, 2 weeks before that, when I am, you know, curled up in a fetal position on the couch, sobbing and going, why is this happening? And thinking my life is just over. God knew already. It's like, you know, if you'll just wait a minute, because really, what's 2 weeks? That's a minute in his. If you'll just wait a minute, I've got your daughter. You know, I just couldn't see that far. But, you know, it's like those Google maps that are up above when you're on the highway and to you it looks like traffic is just gridlocked. He's up there going, oh, no, just around the corner. It's clear sailing.
Yeah.
I have a little pamphlet here called Hope in Troubled Times. I don't know about you, but the times we're living in seem pretty troubled to me. If I didn't have the hope Jesus gives me, I couldn't get out of bed some mornings. Hope in Troubled Times is meant for that kind of morning. Inside its pages, you'll find promises of hope straight from the Bible. Go to talkingdonkeyinternational.org and request offer number 129, Hope in Troubled Times.
I can remember a story with my wife. We had a real house problem in a situation, and she desperately wanted to get in a house. And we looked and looked, and we finally found
Isn't
this
house hunting fun?
Yeah, the house. We finally found this little bitty house. I mean, it was a wreck. It was an absolute dump. But you know,
But you could afford it?
yeah, we could afford it, and we'd fixed up stuff, so no problem. So we put an offer in on this house, and all of a sudden somebody came in and just bought it right out from under us. Janine was just devastated. It's like, I'll never have. I mean, I'm telling
she had her
tales,
heart set
telling
on
tales
that
out of
house.
school now on her, you know. But yeah, she had her heart set on. She just knew she was going to finally have a house, and just devastated. I'll never have a house in my whole life. It's just life is over. And honey, it's just a house. It's just a house. And easier for the husband to say maybe. But you know, in not too long a time, God brought us an amazing house. Just an amazing house. But it was down the road a little bit, you know. And I think about the disciples.
Because he could see the road.
Yeah, I think about the disciples. They're bailing, and all of a sudden they see Jesus in the bow of the boat. He is sound asleep. You got to think about this. The boat is filling up with water. The waves are crashing over.
I'm sure they were yelling at each other.
Oh yeah.
Hey, grab that rope, you know, give me another bucket, whatever.
Yeah,
It
and
had
as the
to be
lightning
noisy.
flashes over, you know, they see him there, sound asleep, and Peter, you know, mouthy Peter runs over. Lord, wake up! Don't you care? We're going to die. Just imagine those words. Lord, don't you care?
Why do our brains, or emotions, I should say, for me, it's like I'm total limbic system when I'm in a crisis. And it just feels like we always go to that thought, God obviously doesn't care about me.
Yeah, yeah. We all find ourselves in that kind of situation a lot of time because it's a trust issue, you know. But Jesus stood up, got up, holds his hands up. You know, it'd be almost fun to try and do that in here and stand up. But
Please don't.
But
I do not want to end up in the pond.
But he held his hands up and says, "Peace, be still." And billions of gallons of water on the Sea of Galilee just smoothed out like a mirror, probably something like this.
Oh, you look at it right now, the breeze stopped,
Yeah.
and it's just glass.
It had been a raging storm. And they're going like, whoa, you know. There were other boats in proximity, and they all come around close all of a sudden. And they say, what manner of man is this? Even the winds and the waves obey him.
Wouldn't you have loved to have been there? I don't think I would enjoy being in the
I
storm,
was going to say, I'm not sure I would have enjoyed being in the storm, you know.
but to see him, and I'm sure he was not concerned. They are literally doing this stationary panic, you know, and
Yeah.
he just stands up. They didn't use the word chill, but it was probably like, guys, you know, what are you worried about? I've got this.
Well, matter of fact, he says, you know, you have little faith. Little faith. They spend all that time with Jesus. They watch all the miracles, all the incredible things going on, and they blow it.
And they're sure
You know?
he's going to let him die out in the middle of the lake.
That you wonder how they thought and felt afterwards. Lord, don't you care? You know, say that to our Lord. You know, don't you care?
Well, Peter had a number of things that he felt guilty about ever saying.
Oh yeah. Yeah. When you think Jesus is on his way to the cross because he cares so much, and you know they've got to accuse him of don't you care?
Because we have blinders. Like
Yeah.
I said, that analogy I said about being when you're in the middle of a traffic jam, all you can see are the 2 or 3 cars ahead of you, and it seems like this is going to last forever. They stretch forever. But God has the Google Earth perspective, and he knows that no, it clears up right out just beyond what you can see.
I like that, the Google Earth. He really does. He's the creator of Google Earth, right? You know, he can.
And yet over and over, the amazing thing isn't that there are times where I have faith. There are times where I literally thought to myself, oh wow, you just did that okay. You didn't panic right then. But the amazing thing is that no matter how often I panic or how badly I'm panicking, that he hasn't gotten out of the boat and said, okay, you know, you still don't trust me. You're how old? And you're doing this again?
Yeah.
I've had it. And
Really,
he doesn't do that.
That's what this walk is all about here on the earth, right? It's all about learning each day, step by step, to trust him. Learning each day that he is in the boat with us. And an amazing thing is, what was that text I read? Let's get in the boat and do what?
Go to the other side.
Go to the other side.
He didn't say what might be in between.
Yeah, he didn't say what was going to be in between, but you're going to get to the other side. And I think
As long as you're in the same boat he's
speaking of,
in.
we probably ought to row a little bit to shore here, but
You want me
we
to
gotta get
paddle?
going. Yeah, go ahead and paddle a little bit. But Yeah, which end of the paddle to use?
No, I know which end. It's I don't know left and right, and I have to always stop and actually think, okay, which way do I paddle? This way, right?
Yeah, there you go, there you go. But you think about that is Jesus knew before they got in the boat there was going to be a massive storm. Never said a word to them about it. He chides them.
Always warn you what you're heading.
Yeah, he chides them a little later about their faith and the situation because they didn't have faith while they were in the storm. Kind of an interesting scenario that he was testing them really to see if they would trust him. If they would trust him. Because as we grow in trust, we grow in the things that he can do in and through us. You know, when we begin to trust him, the Holy Spirit comes into our life. He gives us really, hit the edge. He gives us power and he gives us strength to walk a little further, do a little bit more. But you know, these guys, it says the boat immediately was at the shore. From that storm out there, that raging storm, they're at the shore now. And the guys get out of the boat. Going to be a little tougher for us getting out of the boat here maybe. But
This is the best spot you could pick?
yeah, this is the best spot I could pick. But they get out of the boat and they begin walking up the shore and something major happens.
I felt like Satan was constantly nipping at my heels and I just couldn't catch my breath. I was grieving. I felt scared, confused, anxious, and depressed. My life was literally turned upside down and falling apart. I didn't know what to do, but I knew who had the answers. Can you relate? This amazing study guide changed my life. In 12 weeks, I caught my breath, my faith grew stronger, my confusion turned to clarity, my anxiety lessened, my depression eased. I let myself be held in the arms of Jesus, and he calmed my aching heart. Are you ready for a dramatic change in your life? This 12-week study guide will guide you on your journey of transformation. This study is packed with powerful content to lead you on an encounter with Jesus. Jesus will use this study as a tool to change your life as he did mine. Order your copy today to experience your transformation. Log on to TalkingDonkeyInternational.org.
Can you imagine how relieved they were to get out of the boat, away from that storm, and back on solid ground?
But you know, now they ran into another storm and they look and they turn around.
They did. They
leave.
hightailed it back.
The disciples get back to the boat, they turn around and Jesus isn't with them.
I wonder what they were thinking in that moment. Like, did that guy get him? You know, what should we have stayed? I wonder if feelings of guilt and panic and...
Yeah, I mean, but they look around and there's Jesus up the hill at the graveyard.
He hadn't run in terror like they did.
He hadn't run. This story actually takes place, we can find it in Mark chapter 5. People want to follow along at some time or go back and read the story. It's amazing because basically, disciples, you know, see Jesus up there with this crazy man who virtually chased them back to the boats because he came running and yelling and screaming.
That's why they turned tail. And he wasn't just an ordinary man running at them.
Oh no.
He had been obviously living outside of town for some time. He had chains. They'd actually
living
tried.
outside of town, yeah, in the graveyard, yeah.
But he had chains that he'd broken through. This was someone who, in his craze, that he had actually pulled up chains. I don't know how you do that.
It's because you're possessed. Matter of fact, we can kind of look at this story and he called out to Jesus, but he didn't even have his own voice because it says, "What have we to do with you, Jesus?"
We, the plural.
The plural, yeah, there's demons speaking out of this man. Now people may not understand there's a real conflict, there's a real war going on between good and evil, but it's real. I mean, it's scary. I've been in some countries that I mean, boy, it's right out in front of your face, good and evil. No use to go into it today, but suffice it to say, when they're talking about this man being possessed, it was for real. This guy is out there, he's taking rocks, he's cutting himself, he's piercing himself, doing all these things. You know, he's bleeding everywhere, running holes through himself. Matter of fact, it's kind of interesting because the devil really wants to deface humanity. They want to deface the image of God, all the demons and the devil. And I remember one time we were in one country, Maasai warriors, Maasai witch doctors. He found Jesus Christ. And as I'm talking with him and his wife is sitting right there, sweet thing, and all the other Maasai, they've got all these big piercings and holes and through their noses and everything, and with the rings. And I said, well, what happened to all of that? He said, as soon as we accepted Christ, we took all that off. We got rid of all that. Why? Because they wanted to become like Jesus. They wanted that likeness of Christ.
This man who was living out amongst the tombs, I wondered back then, were people weirded out by cemeteries the way, obviously we're out, there are tombs around us, it's a cemetery clearly, different from what theirs probably looked like. There are some people who wouldn't be caught dead, or
Okay.
pardon the pun, who you couldn't drag them into a cemetery unless maybe it was broad daylight and a lot of people were with them. They have these ideas about, oh, I don't want to go there. Would the disciples have had that same feeling?
Oh, I'm sure there was some of this superstition and some of this old thing hanging on. Jesus hadn't been able to train them out of everything yet.
And I've always wondered, why was that man there? What led him in his life that he ended up living out in the tombs, having people trying to contain him so that he wouldn't either hurt himself or hurt them?
Basically, I think you can say he wanted no restraints in life. I mean, when they chained him out there to get him out of town and try and keep him someplace away from it, he broke every restraint. Well, I think that's a good way to say that's the way he wanted his life. No restraints, no borders, no walls, no restrictions.
I have sometimes, you've probably had this experience too. You're at the county fair or you're walking down the street and you see someone who has clearly had a hard life. You can tell the look in their eye or the blank look in their eye. It's like they're not all there. They're either on something or they've lost a chunk of their mind.
Oh, yeah.
And my tendency is the other side of the street because I don't know how to approach them. There is a little fear of people who are like that.
When I was kind of in the old style and the old things, one of my favorite songs was, it was sung by Steppenwolf that was walking around with tombstones in your eyes.
Okay.
that really is descriptive, I think, of what was going on with this man. And he continues on, and these demons basically have a conversation with Jesus. And they start conversing, and the disciples are there to see everything going on. And Jesus said, get out of this man. Well, why don't you send us to the swine? I'm not certain exactly why he allowed that to happen. Well, there's probably a few reasons, but finally he says, go ahead. And
I'm surprised that there were people because pigs were anathema.
This
You wonder why there were pig farmers in the area.
They probably weren't from Israel. They probably weren't part of the group, but so here's thousands of pigs up there. All these spirits go in the pigs, they all run off the cliff, and every one of them die out. Now, that's a pretty interesting thing because pretty soon all those pigs begin floating over to Israel's side, and they begin hearing about this story of what happened, what Jesus did. Now, it's pretty cool because in verse 15, the people come out now that Jesus...
And they were thrilled that he had helped this poor man.
Oh, not at all. Not at all, because he just killed all their pigs. And they were mad at him. The interesting thing in verse 15, and they came to Jesus and see him that was possessed of the devil and had a legion in him, a legion of demons, a couple thousand demons in him, and he was clothed and sitting there in his right mind.
But they could tell that's the guy that we've been staying away from, that we've been trying to keep out here so he wouldn't come into town.
Yeah. They knew that. But think about this now, clothed. The man was naked.
You're right.
Where did he get the clothes? I like to think that Jesus took off his outer garment and he clothed this man with his own garment.
The way he covers us.
Exactly.
Covers up all our ugly parts.
Yeah, we're bleeding, we're pierced, we're horrible, we're got all this garbage, and he takes his righteousness and wraps it around us.
Well, and even if we don't have any outward signs of the ugliness in us, we all have it in here. if we haven't given over every ounce of it to the Lord already. But he literally covers us with his robe of righteousness.
He does.
And there he probably did it literally.
Yeah, and basically, I think the Bible terms that as, justification. He became justified in Jesus Christ. No longer the sinner that he was, but a saint in Jesus Christ now because God changed him. The other exciting thing about this is he's now in his right mind. He had 2,000 demons dwelling in him. He wanted nothing to do with God except there finally, someplace down in the little hollow of his heart, he saw Jesus, knew that he was the Creator. He wanted that. He couldn't even speak, but Jesus read the intent of his heart. Matter of fact, as you know, Jesus came all the way across the Sea of Galilee because he had an appointment with this guy.
A divine appointment.
Yeah, a divine appointment. He knew exactly what this man was hungering for, and he had the cure. He had the answer. And you think about that. Jesus, he knows our address. He knows where we live.
And he'll meet us wherever we are, even if we are living outside of town in a cemetery because nobody wants us around.
Yeah.
We've burned every bridge in our life. We have no relationships left.
Exactly.
And we can't even articulate what we need anymore. But he'll arrange an appointment.
He will. Folks, Jesus knows your address. He knows all of our addresses. He knows our heart. He knows our life. And he has a divine appointment with you. He knows exactly what you're hungering for. You may be having tons of troubles. You may be just up to your neck in sin. God doesn't care. God will take you and he'll change your life, won't he? He'll do that.
Oh, and you don't even have to be able to articulate it yet because he knows what's in your heart. You might not even recognize, God, I need you. It hasn't been a conscious spoken thought.
Yeah.
And he's there.
It says, and he found him, he was in his right mind. Where'd he get that mind? It was the mind of Jesus Christ. Jesus wrapped him with his righteousness and then he gave him his own mind. This man now was completely whole on the inside and on the outside. My friend, choose Jesus today. Call out to him. He knows your address and he'll come right now to you.
I have a little pamphlet here called Hope in Troubled Times. I don't know about you, but the times we're living in seem pretty troubled to me. If I didn't have the hope Jesus gives me, I couldn't get out of bed some mornings. Hope in Troubled Times is meant for that kind of morning. Inside its pages, you'll find promises of hope straight from the Bible. Go to talkingdonkeyinternational.org and request offer number 129, Hope in Troubled Times.
Thank you for watching. Join us again for another exciting Country Wisdom.
See you next time.